Now, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is here for her first interview on AM this year, and she joins us now. Prime Minister, good morning.
Good morning. I've missed you, Ryan.
I'm sure you have. We've missed you too, Prime Minister. Now, let's start with those rapid antigen tests. Turns out you guys did pinch them from private businesses, and they were in New Zealand.
That's factually incorrect, Ryan, and I understand that Roche themselves are correcting that assertion.
OK, so when the Ministry of Health said we did take the February allocation from Roche and their stock on hand in New Zealand, is the Ministry wrong?
What the Ministry is saying is that, of course, we had an order with Roche, and Roche have themselves verified that, of course, Roche just processed those orders as they were received, and the Ministry of Health were top amongst that queue and received their order. They were not allocations that were destined for any other company.
So you're telling us that Roche had a stockpile of rapid antigen tests sitting in a warehouse in New Zealand that wasn't allocated to anyone?
What I'm telling you is what Roche have advised, which is that they, of course, had rapid antigen tests in country. They were moving through the sequencing of their orders in order, and that was the basis on which we received ours. So the assertion that we have taken orders from other companies, that is just not correct.
OK, you've been very careful with your wording here. You didn't take it from other companies, but did you get priority in the queue in allocating the tests?
No, as I've said, we've been advised that Roche moved through their orders in the sequence in which they were ordered, which I think most people would assume they do. And the Ministry of Health obviously made their orders earlier than others.
So you can give us a categorical guarantee this morning that no private company either had their order delayed or cancelled because of government involvement in the procurement of rapid antigen tests?
That is what I've been advised, or the advice I've seen from Roche. But, Ryan, rather than take it from me, perhaps asking a representative from Roche to speak to that directly.
Well, you're the Prime Minister. So Roche, you mentioned Roche. What about the other companies?
I am indeed, but I'm also not the one operating or sequencing or processing rapid antigen orders.
No, but you did say on January the 27th, Prime Minister. I'm sorry, if I could just finish, Prime Minister. You did say on January the 27th, we have absolutely not taken tests off of businesses. So you've already put a line in the sand here.
And I stand by that. Ryan, the point that we're making here is, of course, that it is not the same thing when we've put in orders and companies have processed them in the order in which they've been received. And as you can imagine, we were out there seeking orders. In this case, that order was placed, as I recall, on the 3rd of December. So they've been processed in the order in which they've been received. What seems to have been the issue here is that an outlet has written a story because some of those rapid antigen tests were already in the country waiting to be dispatched. So they've made an assumption that that means they were going somewhere else. I believe Roche have clarified that themselves. The wider point here, Ryan, is have we been out there in a globally constrained market trying to seek as many rapid antigen tests to provide all New Zealanders, including those, for instance, in businesses where they're critical to keeping our supply chain moving? Have we been seeking rapid antigen tests to support all of that? Yes, we have, and as we should. But it is a globally constrained market at the moment, so there's a lot of demand out there, but we're doing what we can to secure supply for all New Zealanders. OK,
and let's talk about what we're going to do with that supply, because some of that supply will be used for critical businesses, right? Those businesses who need to keep operating, even though we might have widespread Omicron in the community, you know, big numbers. We still don't know which businesses will qualify for them, right?
So, just to be really clear, so all businesses, of course, can operate all the way through because, as you know, the constraints that we have, the public health measures at RED, are actually mostly around large-scale gatherings. So all businesses can operate. The question is which businesses are so important to New Zealand that they should get an exemption if they have a worker who's a close contact.
Yes.
So if they have, for instance, someone in their household who has COVID. So as you can imagine, that is a high-risk judgment. Lots of workplaces wouldn't want that kind of exemption because it is a worker who may have COVID coming into their workplace and it poses risk for other workers. So giving an exemption like that is something that's carefully thought through. But if a business determines that, of course, they're in a critical area of work, critical to our supply chain, critical to emergency services, then of course we want to support that workforce to be safe and supplying rapid antigen tests to do that.
So it's up
Lots
to
of
each
businesses can, of course.
So if I'm a beauty parlour and I want to make sure that my business stays open, so I keep paying my rent.
Didn't listen to the second half of my answer, which was, and they're in a critical area of work that's really necessary for us to keep goods and services moving.
Define critical area, and where's that written on a website?
So, Ryan, we've been working closely with those areas and industries. In fact, many have already had calls from government departments working through the criteria. Ryan, if I could just finish a sentence, it might save you a little bit of time as well.
If you could start with an answer.
We've been working with businesses to finalise the criteria and the way that that system will work, and details of it will be going out this week. But those businesses we've already been engaging with, so they know the kinds of criteria and the likely way that system will operate. But we're trying to make it as light touch as possible.
OK, so this week businesses will have certainty about that type of information. That is good to know.
Yes.
Prime Minister, thank you. It's just gone 90 minutes.
But at the same time, many businesses have also been accessing rapid antigen tests as well. I know of several that already have their own supply.
Prime Minister, how much did it cost you last time you filled up your car with gas?
I drive an electric vehicle, but I do keep an eye on what's happening at the pump, and I can see the prices that we've seen lately. Obviously, we're in an international market at the moment where there's a lot of compounding factors, but those prices are high. Yeah, inflation is really, really hurting people, putting the squeeze on. Do you think it is?
Are you going to make it worse?
No, nor do I believe that we have. I mean, some of the arguments that are being made by the opposition seem to suggest that we shouldn't have had things like the wage subsidy, that we shouldn't be investing in core government services. I really push back on that notion. You know, cutting healthcare spending is not the way to resolve the issue of inflation that we are seeing many of our counterparts experience as well. Many, of course, commentators speculating that this is something that, of course, will peak and then we'll see resolve itself over the course of the year. Totally. But in terms of your income insurance scheme, that's another cost you're lumping onto business. Look, I'd welcome the chance to talk about that, Ryan, because this is a discussion that we need to be having. The first point I'd make is this is something we're consulting on, but implementation wouldn't be for, earliest we're talking like 2023. But the reason we're having this debate is 100,000 Kiwis lose their job in any given year. Yeah. And when we experience COVID and when we experience the Christchurch earthquakes, we know that we have larger scale job loss than usual. And for many people, the economic scarring of that is significant. Now, New Zealand and Australia are amongst some of the only OECD countries that do not have some form of income insurance schemes. So the one that we're consulting on at the moment looks to mirror some of those, but it has also the added benefit that it's not just about job loss. It's if you can't continue to work, for instance, because you're diagnosed, for instance, with cancer. Totally. Making sure that for a period of time you have some form of support to see you through those really difficult times. Absolutely. No, I understand the merits of doing it. It's just good to hear that it won't be implemented while inflation is at the rate that it is at the moment. That's something you would rule out this morning. I mean, we're consulting on it. These programs, they take a long time to develop, which is why we're consulting now. Roger. Very quickly, can you rule out rent controls? Because what's happening already is landlords are putting up rents for fear that you might introduce rent controls. So you've got tenants potentially now already being affected by a vacuum of information. Will you rule out rent controls this morning? We are not considering rent controls. And Ryan, can I also say that we keep a very close eye on what happens in the rental market as a result of our policies. A lot of people, for instance, speculated that when we increased accommodation supplements or benefits, that would be absorbed immediately. That hasn't been the case. We've done analysis on that. And, of course, you'll recall, Ryan, that we've also put limits. So rents can actually only be increased once a year now. But all of the interventions you've made, and rents went up 8%, Trade Me figures, 8% year on year to December. So it's not great, whatever you're doing. Trade Me figures. We use bond data, which hasn't put it at that rate. OK. Prime Minister, just before we go, we have to ask... just very quickly, you said there's no rent control being considered at all. What was Portia Williams on about the other week? She was asked whether or not we were looking at things that we could do to support renters, and of course we continue to do that. That doesn't mean we're introducing rent controls. No, but that included rent controls. So are you rolling out rent controls while you're Prime Minister? I'm saying exactly what I said just moments before. We are not considering rent controls, Ryan.
OK. Will you rule out rent controls while you're Prime Minister?
We are not considering rent controls. We are not introducing rent controls. We're not planning to use rent controls.
I know, but you've
Is
said
that sufficient for you, Ryan?
Well, you've said that about other things before, and then next week we wake up and read the papers and things have changed.
I don't think that's entirely fair.
All right, Prime Minister, very quickly...
If you're talking about pandemics, they are quite changeable.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Prime Minister, just before we go, very quickly, the poll last night, Newshub poll, it is a good result for you. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of bad press, there's been a lot of water that's gone under the bridge, and yet support seems to be holding.
Oh, maybe there's something there worth analysing. Maybe not everyone agrees necessarily with everything they read. I'm not sure, Ryan, but... You know, my view is, and look, I of course talk to people, you know, regularly, receive correspondence from people regularly, you know, do everything I can to get out and about and to hear people's feedback. There is support for what we're doing in really difficult circumstances. We've had a plan all the way through this pandemic, and the results speak for themselves. No one globally has got away scot-free, but we have done better than many. Now, that doesn't mean it's been easy, but I do believe that New Zealanders support what we've tried to achieve, and that is to keep everyone well and to have a strong economy.
Congratulations on those poll results, Prime Minister. We really appreciate your time this morning. We look forward to seeing you next week as well.